All right. So, the thing that comes up a lot in my campaign is people don't know where to start with feats. They don't know what they do, and they don't really want to look at them or look them up, or they can't look them up, or they don't know where to look them up, or whatever. So, I'm going to give a brief description of each feat that is currently out and official. I tried to do this a minute ago and my camera died, so hopefully it'll work this time. I'm not going to go into detail. I'm just going to give my quick. This is what it's for. Would I advise it? And if so, for what class is it good for, or what combination? All right. So, Aberrant Dragon Mark. This makes your character edgier. Gives you a magic tattoo that has some kind of downside to it, like it hurts or it whispers to you or whatever. Basically, you get a magic spell that you can use a certain amount of times. Not a big deal. I mean, it is a big deal because it's a good feat. Um, it I feel like there's a less edgier and more like min maxy version of this later, but it's cool. Um, if this feat interests you, I would advise looking into the feat itself. Next one, actor. This lets you mimic people. That's the. Oh, I almost forgot. Both Aberrant Dragonmark and Actor are half feats, so they give you mechanical benefits, and they also give you 1 point uh, to spend in your stats. Each a half feat will say which stats you could potentially increase. For Aberrant Dragonmark, it's Constitution. For Actor, it's Charisma. Um, Next feat is Alert. It's a +5 to your initiative, which is very good if you really need to go before the enemy. So if you're a rogue or a monk, I would advise this. If it, barbarians, I think you basically get a very similar feature. You get advantage on your adventure, your checks or something. So probably not as useful, but still, like everybody likes going first in initiative. It also makes it so you can't be surprised. So, like during ambushes, there are certain bonuses the bad guys wouldn't get on you. Um, so, good feat. I think it has like one more benefit. Oh yeah, if you can't see something, it doesn't get advantage because you can't see it. So you basically become immune to rogues, which is great. Um, I mean, not entirely, but like the main way rogues get sneak attack damage is through being hidden, and if they don't get advantage for being hidden, you are immune to rogues. So there you go. Uh, Next up is Artificer Initiate. You become a mini Artificer. You get a cantrip and a tool and a first level spell, all from the Artificer list. It's good. Next one, Athlete. A little niche. I like it a lot. In my campaigns, it's stronger than in your typical campaigns because I use a homebrew rule where if you use more than 5 feet of movement at once, so like if you're in difficult terrain and you're maneuvering around somebody, or you're from prone and you get up, or you get on a mount, anything that makes you use more than 5 feet of movement at once, you get an opportunity attack, or you're open to opportunity attacks, which is typically something that only happens when you like move out of somebody's range. Um, or there's some other feats where you come into their range, whatever. Um, Athlete, it's a half feat, and you can increase your strength or dex. Um, and in addition, you can get up from prone with only 5 feet. Normally, it takes half, so it makes you so you wouldn't take an opportunity attack from getting up. And also, you climb. When you climb, you don't use extra movement. Um, and when you are doing a long jump or a high jump. Typically, you need at least 10 feet of movement to get a running start to actually do the jump. But with this, you only need 5 feet, so it halves that. So the last one is kind of situational. I don't think running jumps come up that often, um, where the distance matters. However, high jumps kind of do, because a lot of times you want to hit something right above you, and you need all your movement, you know, to like whap, get into cover, whap, get into cover, that kind of thing. Um, so I like this feat a lot. I would say in your average campaign that doesn't use my homebrew, not as useful, but it's still a half feat. You still get your stat buff, and you still get those benefits. Prone comes up a lot, and half movement sucks. So that'll help you a lot potentially. Um, Next one, Bountiful Luck. Uh, it's for halflings only. It's a full feat, so you don't get a stat increase with it. But what it does is, if an ally rolls a one, you can potentially you can use your reaction so they can re-roll it. So your party will like you a lot. You want to spread the love. Next one is Charger. You can run if you dash at somebody, which is you double your movement for your action. You can use your bonus action to hit them, and if you do, it'll hit harder. If you don't want to hit them, you can shove them, which means you can knock them to the ground, or you can push them 10 feet away from you, or 5 feet away. I forget. Um, so potentially, I think this is better for low level campaigns, which is most campaigns, honestly, because you only get one attack with your bonus action, not two. So it makes you a lot more. It lets you do more damage while being more mobile. So it kind of depends on how much running around you're doing, how useful this will be. But at low levels, it's great. And 5 damage is a lot at low levels, so you can maybe one shot some stuff. Um, Once you start getting meatier enemies, might not be as big a deal. Also, once you get past level 5, it's more beneficial to attack twice than to attack once. But potentially, if things teleporting around a lot, you may not be able to make. You may have to dash to keep up with things, and then you're at least getting one attack in. So, situationally useful. Um, I just realized I had my YouTube video on as well. I hope that sound wasn't leaking over. So I paused it. Next, chef. You know what a chef is. You know what a chef does. But in all seriously, you get a buff to your constitution or your wisdom. You get cook's tools, and you can make food that gives you some benefits with like temporary hit points and stuff, and you gain more benefits from a short rest, stuff like that. So it's nice. Nobody's going to complain about having a chef, and if you want to be a chef, this will add mechanical benefits to your roleplay. So it's good. Crossbow expert. This is a great feat. Um, if you're using, it does a couple of things that are specific to if you're using crossbows, and one thing that is good for basically any ranged character. So it lets you ignore the loading property on crossbows, which is good for if you're using crossbows. If you make an attack with an one-handed weapon, it lets you make a bonus. Use your bonus action to make an attack with a hand crossbow. If I remember correctly, let me double check. This one's kind of specific, so I actually do want to give the full rundown. Ignore the loading property on crossbows with which you are proficient. When you use the attack action to attack with a one-handed weapon, which can be a hand crossbow or a melee weapon, just so you know, you can use your bonus action to attack with a hand crossbow you are holding. So you can either go pew, pew, or whack, pew. However, if you go whack, pew, you need to be able to reload. You need a hand to reload. So you would have to like stow, reload, draw, which is awkward. Or the more common thing would be to have a magical crossbow. There's an artificer magic that gives you magical ammo that just forms. And I'm sure there's like some gnomish homebrew tinker crossbows that could do it as well. Um, but just know rules as written. If you have a normal crossbow, you need a hand to do that. The last feature, technically it's the second, but I went out of order because it's the most universally applicable, is uh, if you're within 5 feet of a target and you're using a ranged attack roll, not crossbow specifically, any ranged attack roll, that does not impose disadvantage on your attack, which normally it does. In D&D, I know it's weird. Point blank ranged shots have disadvantage in D&D. It's just a thing. Um, However, with this feat, doesn't apply. So if you have a longbow, if you're using a magical ranged attack, anything like any ranged attack, point blank, no longer imposes disadvantage. So this is great for rogues, sorcerers, anybody who is using a lot of ranged attack rolls that also wants to get in melee potentially, or just finds themselves in melee, even if they don't really want to. Because I know a lot of beasties attack you by biting you. So, that's a thing. So, uh, this is great for rogues that want to rely on the hand crossbow. Potentially fighters, I could see being kind of like if you are in a campaign that doesn't use guns, but you kind of want to feel like a gunslinger, this is a great way to do that. Um, and then just the loading property means you can attack more than once. So, more useful later levels when you can attack more than once, or if you're using the bonus action to attack twice. Um, so, yeah, great feat. Went a little more detail into that one than the others just because it's a more involved feat. Next one is called Crusher. It's half feat. You can get increase the strength of dex. And if you hit something with a bludgeoning weapon, which is like, it makes that kind of sound when you hit, it's probably bludgeoning, um, as opposed to slashing or piercing. Um, so, uh, if you hit somebody with a bludgeoning weapon and they're like your size or one size bigger, you can move them, which is very, very handy. You can Sparta kick somebody into a pit. I mean, just you can bop somebody away from your ally, tackle them to save them. There's a lot of utility with that. And on top of that, um, you get a bonus to your crits. If you crit something with a bludgeoning attack, all attacks on that creature until the beginning of your next turn are with advantage. So I will say monks probably would get the most benefit out of this, or fighters or paladins with that prefer hammers to blades. We get a lot of mileage, but maybe not barbarians, just because you're probably going to be using a great axe. You can use a what's it called, a maul, and still do that big damage, but most people that are barbarians that I'm aware of typically are using the great axe or the great sword. The great axe does more damage when you crit with it, uh, with your later level feat, just so you know. But that's beside the point. Um, I personally, I like hammering weapons, so I love this feat. Um, Next up, defensive duelists. You can use your reaction to parry. This is good. Dragon Fear. Instead of, if it's for Dragonborns only, you get a +1 to your strength, charisma, or constitution, and you gain the ability to, instead of do dragon breath, you can do a dragon roar that can scare everybody. And fear is a very good debuff in 5th edition. So, pretty nice. Next one, kind of meh. Personally, As a DM, if you're a Dragonborn, I would I would just give you this. In fact, I would say, "Hey, do you want Dragonhide?" When you started your character, and I assume you would say yes because it gives you a +1 to your Strength, Con, or Charisma, which can make you very strong. Or, but the other benefits are kind of bland. I mean, they're fine, they're good, they're flavorful, but they're not useful normally. So it gives you scales, which means if you aren't wearing armor, you can calculate your AC with a 13 plus your dex instead of a 10 plus your dex. So the number of classes that helps with like stat combinations is very small. Like you would have to do some math to figure out if that would benefit your character or not, and it probably wouldn't. The other thing it does is it gives you claws, which is cool. Like, I mean, you already have claws, but this means you can kind of like and actually use them. So your unarmed attacks, you do a D4 slashing plus your strength instead of a just flat 1 plus your strength, which is how unarmed attacks usually work. So, okay, feat. I wouldn't take it for a stat increase, but if your DM would just give it to you, I mean, you offer him some pizza, I'm sure he wouldn't mind. Like I said, this isn't going to break his game. It might give you a little benefit out the gate if it's like player one style or whatever, but I don't think anybody's going to be mad. Um, anyway, side bit. I like Dragonborns, but they're kind of underpowered in 5th edition. Or at least they were. They're going to update it next book, or they're going to add some new Dragonborn subspecies clarifications. I don't know how they're going to do it exactly, but they updated the race, and they're going to print it in the next book. So here in sometime later this year. So they won't be underpowered anymore. But right now they kind of are, in my opinion. Anyway, this isn't about Dragonborns. This is about feats. The next one, Drow High Magic. You get some magic. You have to be a Drow to use it. It's a good feat if you're a Drow. Probably don't be a Drow. I don't know. It depends how lore heavy your campaign is. And most Drow are typically evil. Like most Drow are very, very evil. In the traditional setting. In your setting, if they're not, then who cares? Um, it's a good feat. It gives you detect magic, levitate, and dispel magic. And I think detect magic is for free, and the other two are once per short rest. So good spells, good feat. Dual wielder. If you're using 2 weapons, use this feat. It's very good. Boosts your AC, and it makes using 2 weapons a lot less annoying. Because typically how drawing your weapons works is you can draw 1 weapon as part of your attack. So, first turn, attack. Second turn, attack, attack. So it just speeds things up. And the other thing is you can use bigger weapons. So typically you have to use like short swords, daggers. But if you take this feat, you can use like long swords or battle axes. Good with battle axes. I'm just saying. So good feat. If you're using 2 weapons, take this feat. Next one is Dungeon Delver. It's very situational. If you're in like, if your campaign is nothing but dungeons, this might save you. It gives you resistance to trap damage and gives you advantage on like detecting secret doors and stuff. So great. I don't typically use. I know the game is Dungeons and Dragons. I don't typically use a lot of dungeons, so doesn't come up a lot in mine. I do more like natural surroundings, mines, plains, castles. A lot of stuff that I haven't had a lot of death traps. I've had a few, but uh, I feel like it very heavily depends on your campaign if this is going to come up enough to be worth it. And if you're watching this, you're probably running one of my campaigns. which means it's not going to come up, which means I would advise against it. But things change. A lot of times, what the decisions you make change the course of our adventures. We might be delving some dungeons, in which case, go for it. I'm just letting you know. Plus and minuses. Next one is durable. Um, mm, it's okay. It's a half feat, so you get a +1 to your con, which if you need a buff to your con, this is one of the better ones. Um, there's like there's several feats that give you a +1 to con, and if that's the only reason you're taking this feat, I would advise one of the other ones probably. But anyway, how durable works is in addition to a +1 to your Constitution score, when you use hit die to regain hit points, which that's what you do on a short rest typically. Um, it sets it so the minimum amount you can gain is twice your Constitution modifier. So the smaller your hit die, the more advantage. So like, I would actually advise this if you're a sorcerer, because sorcerers have a d6 as their hit die, and you typically have you want a fairly high Constitution. So if you have a a 16 in your con, that gives you +3 to your modifier, and double that is 6. Well, your die is a 6, so you get maximum regeneration every time. I also like this feat comboed with the next one because it gives you another way to use hit die to heal. But by itself, it's kind of mediocre to lesser. I would advise, if you aren't in those specific circumstances I mentioned, probably look for other feats. That being said, the next feat, Dwarven Fortitude, is a Dwarven exclusive feat where you can use your hit, you get a plus to your con, again, and whenever you take the dodge action, you can use hit die to heal yourself. Well, spend one hit die to heal yourself, which, like I just said, pairs very well with durable. So, I personally, one of my first characters that I dearly loved, and this worked pretty well, was a drunken master dwarf. That how that worked is I would use my bonus action to do patient defense, which is the dodge action, and then I would use that to make myself harder to hit and heal at the same time, while still being able to hit things. So I don't know why I'm looking down here so much, but anyway, so that will make you that specific combo is why I liked it. And then I had a magical item that doubled the amount of healing I got from hit die, which actually made me very hard to kill. So I was like the tankiest monk you'd ever seen, which was a weird build, but it worked. I believe the the item is called the Periaptive Wound Closure. If you want to look up that magical item, just so you know. Um, uh, anyway, next fate, Eldritch Adept. You can get a okay. So the Warlock class has these special class features called Eldritch Evocations, and I get to pick between them. And some of them are really cool. This gives you access to those, but only if they don't have a prerequisite. Or, okay, if you're a warlock and you have the prerequisite, you can take those invocations with this feat. But if you are not a warlock, you cannot take any evocations that have a prerequisite. So even if you have Eldritch Blast, you cannot take an Eldritch Blast enhancing feat with this particular feat. At least most DMs, that rules is written. You could ask your DM and they might say it's fine. Um, I personally probably wouldn't, because I think that would take away from the Warlock class too much. Like, Eldritch Blast is its thing. And I think being able to Eldritch Blast as good as a Warlock would just not be fair. Um, but there's a lot of really good feats that don't have prerequisites. I said that wrong. A lot of really good evocations that don't have prerequisites that you can get with this feat. Like, probably the one taken most often is Devil Sight. I mean, a lot of people dip into Warlock specifically for that because it gives you magical dark vision, meaning you get dark vision and you can see in magical darkness, which is better than most because most things can't. Um, there's also Mask of Many Faces, which lets you cast Disguise Self at will. There's a lot of good stuff. Next one, Elemental Adept. It makes it so you pick a elemental damage type, and uh, it cancels out resistance to that type of damage. Also, if you roll ones, it counts as twos instead. Um, so very handy if you're like a very focused caster, like you just want to. If you're one of those just fireball types, then take this, and your fireballs will fireball more. It's great. Um, Also, just so you know, you can take this feat multiple times for multiple damage types, but don't. It's not worth it. um, Next up is Elven Accuracy. Just it gives you double advantage and a plus to one of your stats: Dexterity, Intelligence, Wisdom, or Charisma. And if you are making an attack roll that uses any of those, you have advantage, it lets you roll a third die and choose between them instead of two. So it gives you double advantage, basically. So you become legless, basically. You have to be an elf or a half elf for that one. Fade Away, Gnomish exclusive, gives you a plus to dexterity or intelligence. And you can, if you get hit, you can turn invisible. Fey Teleportation, you get a plus one to intelligence or charisma. You can speak, read, and write Sylvan, and you get Misty Step. Fey Touched, the same thing but better. Not really. I mean, actually, yes. You don't get Sylvan, but you get a first level spell in addition to Misty Step. The spell has to be from the divination or enchantment um, school of magic. So, like, I don't remember which ones those are, but like Charm Person or not Scrying, that's a high level one. Detect, most of the detects, detect magic or detect poison or whatever. Detect good and evil. Those are all divination styles. So it gives you those. Uh, Again, and this one you don't have to be an elf. It's just Fey touched. At some point, a Fey was like, boop, and now you have a little Fey power. So there you go. Next one is great for any melee class, Fighting Initiate. Basically, the fighter, when they are at level 1, has a bunch of different fighting styles they can pick between. Defender, armor, uh, dual wielder, duelist, heavy weapon, whatever. Blind fighting. So basically, most melee classes would be interested in one of those, at least. Maybe, I mean, heck, Ranger and Paladin get a smaller list of these fighting styles as well, and they might want it just to double dip, so your Ranger can slash and do archery stuff or something. So, um, definitely take a look at it. It's nice. Probably the Barbarian would get the most use out of it because getting heavy weapon style, or dual wielder. Either one of those, depending on your flavor. I would say heavy is definitely more common, but dual wielding is fun barbarian style for me, especially early levels. Um, I will say later on, especially if you are a class that uses your bonus action for something, less so. Um, because, for dual weapons, you need your bonus action for that third attack. Anyway, got sidetracked. Um, Next one, firearm specialist. You get proficiency with guns, and it makes it so if you misfire, you can use your reaction to potentially not misfire, and you ignore loading with light one. So it makes it so you can use guns better. It's good. If you're in a campaign that uses guns and you want to use guns, this is a great feat. Flames of Phlegathos. If you're a tiefling or a feral tiefling, you do fire good. You do fire real good. Um, it makes it so when you do fire, it'll like wrap around you, and things that hit you do take fire damage. So it's not like it's more flavorful than anything. You also get a +1 to your intelligence or charisma. And if you roll a 1, when you do a fire type attack, your ones you can re-roll. So it's a nice little boost, but it's not like required. The next like 6 feats are all like gift of the blank dragon, chromatic gem, um, or uh, metallic, and they're unearthed arcana, which means they aren't official yet. So I'm not going to talk about them, but they're all good. If you once they become official, like they've been tweaked, and you're interested in being blessed by a dragon of some kind, or you're a DM and you want to bless your players by a dragon, look at these feats. That might be good, but I'm not going to deal with it right now. They're nice. All right. Next one, grappler, the OG, the only feat in the basic rules, because it's not that great. I kid, it's situational to say the least. Grappling is not that impactful in D&D 5e. All it does is makes it so you can't move away from whatever's grappling. So it's pretty good on like monsters to keep the heroes in range, but most like it's kind of a tanky. Like if you're trying to control the enemy so they won't attack your squishier people, this is good. Grappling's good, but otherwise not that good. This gives some benefits to grappling on top of that. Really one benefit. If you have something grappled, you have advantage on the thing. So I would probably say, unless you're like grappling them with your legs somehow, you couldn't use two wet-handed stuff. But like if you grappled with one hand, you have a one-handed weapon, then you could do it. But I wouldn't let you great axe with one hand into the person. So this is for a melee focus, one-handed fighter, maybe like unarmed, so like a boxer or a monk or anything like that. Um, I will say by itself, this is not good. But there is another feat later called Tavern Brawler that lets you makes it easier to grapple things. So combined, they're decent. Alone, neither of them are that great. Tavern Brawler is the better one of the two by themselves. And I wouldn't even look at this one unless I had Tavern Brawler or I just really wanted to grapple things. Like that was your thing. Um, but anyway, I forgot. It does have one other benefit. You can, if you have something grappled, you can make a pin roll, which basically you would both become restrained. So, yay! It benefits your party. Uh, if it was just him, I would. Never mind. We've talked about grappler too long. It's not a good enough feat for me to ramble about it. Especially when the next one is one of the most broken feats in the game for the classes that use it. Great Weapon Master. This is a bad feat because I feel like everybody takes it. Every melee class that uses two-handed weapons takes this. And so I just give it to them. At level 8, if you are in my campaign and you are a two-handed weapons guy, I will give you this feat. So don't take it as one of your normal ones. Um, but here's what it does and why it's so absurdly powerful. The first one, which is good enough by itself, when you score a critical hit or you kill something, you can make a melee attack with a bonus action, which is already increasing your damage by a lot at low levels. Like a lot. But the next one is what actually makes it overpowered. Maybe that's not the right word, but makes it super appealing to min-maxers. When you are using a heavy weapon that you're proficient in, you can take a -5 to hit to do +10 damage. That is a lot of damage in D&D. And that's every attack. So if you're a fighter, you're making 2, 3, 4. If you're max level, you can make like 9 attacks potential. Well, 8 attacks. Well, more with spells and stuff, maybe more. But uh, that's a lot of damage potentially. Um, I would say barbarians get the most benefit out of this because they can attack recklessly, which gives them advantage, which means they're more likely to hit, which means it's less a big deal if they miss. It's less likely they will miss, I mean. So it's a very risk reward talent, but typically you're going to know if it's a target you want to use this benefit on or not. So, like, if it's a red dragon that's really hard to hit, maybe not use it. But if it's on just like a random troll or something that you can hit real easy but has a lot of hit points, yeah, this will tear it apart. It makes like oozes a non-issue. So anyway, I rambled a bit on that one because it's one of the like 3 broken uh, feats in terms of they're just so good that everybody who can take them takes them. Well, there's probably like 5 class specific. There's 4 class specific ones and one that just like everybody takes. Well, not everybody, but is like really good. We'll get to that. I will announce each of them. Um, anyway, we're going in alphabetical order. So the next one is Gunner. I know we already had a gun feat, but this one was in Tasha's, and so it's more gunslinger based as opposed to just guns in general. So um, it does a lot of the same things, but it also kind of rolls in some of the crossbow expert ones, so you can use your bonus action to shoot. And the other one, but this one is like it doesn't impose disadvantage when you're close, like the crossbow expert. So if you're using guns, compare the two, see which one you like better. I think this one will probably be more the style, but both of them are good. They kind of overlap, so probably don't take both. Um, but they, yeah, so and you get a +1 to Dex with this one as well. Next one, healer. Um, if you're in a low magic setting or a setting, this is a very good feat. I will say, if you're in my campaign, you don't have to take this feat. I gave it to you already. Check your sheet. Um, because I just think it should be baseline. I mean, if you're using a resource to heal somebody, it should heal them. Because rules is written, healing kits do not heal you; they just stabilize you. So if you're dying, you can make somebody not die, but they don't come back up. They get no healing from it. This will give them 1 HP, which means they will come back up. Also, you can use your action and a healer's kit to actually heal a person who is not dying. I mean, I guess you could use it on them as well, potentially. Um, Maybe they stack. Anyway, so you use a healer's kit on a creature, and they heal 1d6 plus 4 points, plus additional hit points equal to the number of hit dice they have. So that's a lot to say. You can heal with a healer's kit. Um, and so it's a good feat. If you're in another campaign, I would say if you have magic healing, it's not as important. But if you are in a party that doesn't have a lot of magical healing, this will go a long way in terms of the group's longevity. Um, and also just makes healing kits worth getting. Because healing potions are expensive. I think a healer's kit is like 1 gold. A healing potion is like 50. So, you know. Um, heavily armored is the next feat. And it's very straightforward. It gives you a +1 to strength. And if you are not proficient in heavy armor, you are now proficient in heavy armor. In order to take this feat, you must be proficient with medium armor. So, there you go. If you need that, there you have it. Slightly more interesting is Heavy Armor Master. You get a +1 to strength, and if you are wearing heavy armor, uh, any bludgeoning, piercing, or slashing damage you take that isn't magical is reduced by 3. So, I mean, that can add up. I know a lot of like smaller swarm style enemies would have a hard time dealing more than like 4 or 5 damage to you on a good roll. And I think some of the like average damage they deal is like 3. So like a swarm of goblins, you would be essentially invulnerable. um, so situationally useful, probably more useful early game than late game when things are hitting you hard, but still, that can add up. Um, let's see here. Next one is Infernal Constitution. Tieflings and feral tieflings only. You gain resistance to cold and poison damage, and you have advantage on saving throws against being poisoned. Very useful, especially if you're going somewhere you think you will be taking cold or lightning or poison damage. So, there you go. I don't know why I said lightning. I just kind of assumed that. So, just poison or cold damage. If you're going somewhere, take those. Maybe take that if you're a tiefling. If not, stare at them out of jealousy because, I don't know. Everybody loves tieflings, except me. I don't like them. I don't trust them. Tiefling racist. Don't at me. Don't hate me. Hate the lore. I tease. To be fair, it's not even tieflings I in the lore I dislike because I know it's not their fault. It wasn't their choice typically to have demon stuff done to them. Um, it was their parents typically, but like most people I know who play tieflings, their characters are insufferable. I hate them. They're so annoying. I know on Critical Role, Jester was a breath of fresh air. Molly was kind of a typical tiefling. I mean, he had his moments. I greatly preferred it when he went to Caduceus. I'll put that. Anyway, rant aside. Next feat, inspiring leader. Uh, charisma prerequisite of 13. If you have this feat, you can spend 10 minutes giving an inspirational speech to your party, and they get hit points, like a buffer on top of their normal hit points. Temporary hit points is what it's called. And those you can do that once per short rest. So I feel like most of the fun of this feat is in giving the speech. If you don't want to give the speech and just want to say I give a speech and they get hit points, I think it's kind of boring. But it's a mechanical benefit to being a bit of hearing your own voice. So take that as you will. Next one, Keen Mind. Has kind of a bad reputation. I like it. It's still kind of niche. Like, it's not a flashy talent. And obviously, if you don't care about your intelligence score, don't take it. What's wrong with you? But the other benefits have to do with, like, which way is north? When is sunset? What was it that weird guy said to you creepily last Thursday? Like, so it's it's a very specific talent. If you like it, take it. If it sounds stupid to you, don't take it. I feel like that is the best advice I can give on that talent. Um, Lightly armored gives you proficiency in light armor and a stat increase. Linguist, you get languages and a cipher that you can make. Um, if that sounds good to you, go for it. The most broken talent in the game. And by broken, I just mean complete. It's good for everybody in every situation. There's no one who would not benefit from Lucky. It's a very straightforward talent. Honestly, you get 3 luck points every day, and whenever you roll, you can use one of those luck points to roll an extra die, and you choose one of the die you rolled. So if you have advantage, it gives you super advantage. If you have disadvantage, guess what? You still have super advantage because you get to pick. You don't have like you don't have to roll like 2 sets of disadvantage and take the third lowest. No, no. You roll 3 die and you pick one, which would typically be the highest, unless you're like a masochist, in which case pick whichever one you want, I guess. So yeah, and then on top of that, when something is trying to hit you specifically, you can spend a luck point to make it roll a die and choose whether it uses its die or your die. So there you go. Next up, Mage Slayer. Very useful talent if you're up against a lot of magic-y people. Gives you some bonuses to when you're up close. Like if they cast, you can hit them. They if they try to cast at you specifically, then you have advantage on resisting what they're doing. If you hit them while they're concentrating, it's harder for them to stay concentrating on it. Good talent. I keep calling them talents. Feats. Magic Initiate. You get a first level spell and a cantrip. There's the 2 cantrips. 2 cantrips and a first level spell from one class. Most people pick Wizard, and most people pick Find Familiar as their spell because it's really good. Gives you a magical pet that lets you do a lot of like shenanigans potentially, including like seeing through their eyes and stuff. So like you can get a owl and have it perch on your head as a human and in the dark see through its eyes instead of yours, or a bat, even better because it has blind sight. um, but there's some other stuff too. So if you want just a little bit of magic without actually multiclassing into a mage, or if you are some kind of magic user and you want a little bit more magic, this is also good for you because it gives you more options, especially if you pick like a different casting class, or heck, if you like yours and you just want more of your own class, you can do that. So it's good. It's good. Martial Adept. This one's a little complicated, but I'm going to make it as simple as I can. There is a fighter subclass, archetype, whatever you want to call it, called the Battle Master. And this subclass has special maneuvers that let them do special things depending on the maneuver. And they use these maneuvers by spending superiority die, which is just like an extra die that you can. With this feat, it's a D6. I don't remember if it's a D6 in the base class or not, but you have those die, and you can use that many maneuvers per day or per rest, because I think you get them back on a short rest. And Martial Adept does the same thing. You get 2 maneuvers, and you get 1 die. The base class gets more maneuvers and more die. So this is great if you're a battle master and you want more, or you're a melee class and you want like 1 or 2 special things that you can do. Uh, excuse me, a little burp. Anyway, sometimes. So like you could trip attack, which knock somebody over. Disarming attack, smack your weapon out. Fancy foot fur, can't touch me. There's a lot. Riposte. Ah, you missed, but I hit you. So there's a lot of applications that you could do for these potentially. So beneficial for any martial class. Take a look at it. Medium armor master. This one is very specific. You need medium armor, obviously. The most broadly applicable thing is you no longer has disadvantage on stealth checks because of your armor. Because the good medium armor imposes disadvantage on stealth, and this gets rid of that. I will say there's some magical versions that get rid of that already, so not a big deal. The other benefit is very number based. So typically, medium armor, you get the base armor value plus your dex up to 2. This makes it up to 3. So if you have a 16 in your dex and you're wearing medium armor for whatever reason, this will make a very, very good feat for you because you don't have to do your stealth and you get more AC. But if the stars don't align in that way for your character, ignore this feat. It's not worth it. Next up, Meta Magic Adept. I'm just gonna be honest. If you're not a sorcerer, don't get this. I don't think it's worth. If you are a sorcerer, definitely get this. It just makes you better at what you're doing already. So yeah, mobile. This one is one of the super feats, but only really for monk. Um, this one is very. It doesn't increase your damage, but it makes you mobile. Oddly enough, basically it gives you 10 more feet of movement, and whenever you hit something, whenever you swing at something, you don't actually have to hit it, but whenever you swing at something, you can move away, and it can't take opportunity attacks against you. So very beneficial if you are kind of in a hit and run style. So rogues could also be very useful for this. I know they have bonus action disengage, but they might want a bonus action hide or dash or something as well. So I would say really only those 2 classes would get a lot of benefit out of this. But potentially, if you really like these benefits, you could get them in other classes. Moderately armored is pretty straightforward. Just you gain proficiency in medium armor and shields, and you have to already have proficiency with light armor. I don't know anybody that needs that, but if you do, go for it. Uh, Next one is mounted combatant. It's great if you have a mount. It lets you protect the mount from damage, and you get advantage on things smaller than your mount. I will say for those in my campaigns, if you want to be like a mounted fighter, I will give you this talent. I mean, I feel like it's kind of required. So I won't. Let me be fair. I won't give it to you. I will give you an NPC that you can spend gold and time with in order to learn this feat, if you want it, because I do think it is very valuable for anyone wanting that kind of play style. But it's pretty rare. I mean, mounts are kind of. It's another layer of complication that I know a lot of players don't enjoy. Like, I offered a Pegasus to one of my players, and they refused. Maybe it was for morality. Maybe it was because they didn't want to deal with flying with a mount. Who knows? Um, but anyway, so again, good feat. It provides a lot of passive benefits. um, for if you are on a mount. But if you don't use a mount, it's worthless. Observant, very good depending on your campaign. The one it's a half feat, so you get a plus to either intelligence or wisdom. But the universal benefit is you can read lips. So if you understand the language the person is saying, you can understand what they're saying as long as you can see their lips, which is very nice. The other thing is kind of depends on your DM because it gives you +5 to your passive perception and investigation scores, which depends how often your DM uses passive scores. I use passive perception reasonably often. Passive investigation, not as much, but potentially. Really, the only time is like if you're checking a room very thoroughly, I would probably use passive. But anyway, so situationally useful. Not a really flashy talent, but useful when it's useful, especially like an intrigue heavy campaign. I would really enjoy that. Next one, Orcish Fury. Uh, it's available to half orcs. Um, it doesn't say orcs as well, but honestly, I would give it to them anyway. Because I mean, why not? It makes sense. Anyway, half feet, so you get a +1 to your strength or con. Once per long rest, you can do an extra die of damage, and when you use your orcish relentless endurance feat to be too angry to die, you can use your reaction to hit the person or make a weapon attack. So it doesn't technically have to be the person that hit you, but it's probably the person that hit you. It's real good. If you're an orc, if you're a half orc, I would advise taking this one. Piercer. You stab better. That's the easiest way. Uh, you can roll another die when you crit, and if you are doing piercing damage and you roll low, you can roll again. It's that simple. Poisoner. I like this talent. It makes it so if you deal poison damage, it ignores resistance to poison on whatever you're hitting with it. You can apply poison to your weapons as a bonus action. You get proficiency with a poisoner's kit. It gives you poison that you can make for 50 gold, and it tells you how much damage it does and how long it takes to make and how long it lasts and everything. So if you want to poison stuff, this is probably a great place to start because there's not a lot in the player's handbook about poisons, and a lot of the stuff it does have is very expensive, and it doesn't really tell you what it does. So it's like, this just makes it easy. You don't have to look at a bunch of stuff. You don't have to bother your DM with a lot of homebrew. This just tells you something. I intend to use this on one of my characters. So there you go. Next one, Polearm Master. This is a great talent. I know a lot of people put it up there with Great Weapon Master. I would say on its own, it isn't as good as most people say, but paired with Great Weapon Master or Sentinel, it's very, very, very strong. It's multiplicate. It just amplifies all of those things into a stupid amount. So what's it do? Um, you have to be using a pole arm, which is a glaive, halberd, quarterstaff, spear. When you attack, you can use your bonus action to do another attack with the blunt end. It'll only do a D4 with the other end, but still. Um, and the other thing, which is arguably more interesting, is when a creature enters your reach, you get an opportunity attack. So normally opportunity attacks are only when you leave. This lets you do them when they enter. And so if you combine that with a feat we'll get to later, uh, it does those benefits on top, which we'll get to that shortly. Um, anyway, so very good feat in combination. Next, on its own too, but especially in combination. Prodigy. Uh, you gain a tool, a skill, and a language. And one proficiency that you have already gets upgraded to expertise. It's a great feat. It's amazing. I love it. Um, if you're the skill monkey, or if you're in a small party, or you just want to be really good at one thing, it's great. Little caveat: you have to be human, half elf, or half orc. So you have to have some human in you, basically, to use this feat. But it's great if you do. Next one. Very simple talent, but one of my personal favorites, resilient. You choose an ability score. You get 1 point in that ability score, and you gain proficiency in saving throws of that ability score. That's great. I don't know how, like, saving throws are whenever something happens to you that you want to not happen to you. And having a proficiency in that just helps so much. Um, I will say the most common resilience, I think, or at least for my characters, because I've taken this feat several times, is for Constitution. Because especially on like paladins, um, because you get an extra Constitution point, which will probably increase your health. If you're taking this, it'll bump it up to the even number, and then on top of that, your proficiency means that your concentration's harder to break, and you're you're more hardy, that whole bit. So I was it's good for anybody, but I would say casters especially. This one and another feat later makes it very hard for your concentration to fall. So great feat. I would say the most benefit is from constitution, because just having it is nice. But any saving throw that you do not have proficiency in, and you also just want that one little boop to get another stat modifier increase, this is a great way to do it. So, yeah, there you go. Revenant Blade from Ebron, Rising of the Last War. This is a very specific talent for a very specific weapon, but it's good. You have to be an elf, which makes it less good, but it's what it is. Uh, Potentially your DM can waive that prerequisite. I wouldn't, because I like races to feel unique. But basically, a Revenant Blade is basically the double-bladed lightsaber of D&D. It's a scimitar staff, so you got your grabby part in the middle, and you got blades on both ends, and you spin it. It's great. This makes it so that you get a +1 in your dexterity or strength, so it's again a half feat. But while you are holding your Revenant Blade, you gain a +1 to your armor class. Number 2, the weapon is now finesse. Normally it's not. So if you are an elf, you can now use your dexterity to swing the thing. Um, the only weapon it's used for is with the Revenant double-bladed scimitar right now. Um, you can talk with your DM, me, or whoever. Your DM. I assume if you're watching this, I'm your DM. And we could make you a weapon similar to that, or and convey similar benefits. But yeah. So very specific feat. But if you're using a Revenant Blade, you're probably using this feat. Um, Ritual Caster. You get a spell book, and you can write ritual spells in it, and you can cast those ritual spells from your spell book. You start out with 2, and if you find any more, you can spend gold to add them, and time. There's some pretty decent ritual spells in D&D. Like, they're all like situational, useful spells, but like the situations they're useful in, they're very useful. So there you go. One of my players took that, and she has enjoyed it immensely so far. For nothing else than for identify, she's gotten some good um information on some magical such and such. Next feat is Savage Attacker. Don't get much simpler than this. When you roll damage on a melee attack, you can re-roll the weapon's dice and use either total. So obviously, the bigger a die you're using, the more useful this is. If you roll a 1 on a d6 die, it doesn't really feel that bad. If you roll a 1 on a d12, it feels kind of bad. So if that is something you want, do this. It'll just increase your average damage. It's not super flashy, but it's useful. Next one, Second Chance. It's on a halfling only. You get a Dex Con or Charisma increase. And when a creature you can see hits you with an attack roll, you can use your reaction to force it to re-roll. Once you use this ability, you can't use it again until the next initiative. So it's once per combat kind of thing. It's a potential miss. That's all it is. It seems a little weak to me, but I mean, hey, it might save your life. Um, if it were me, I'd save it for a crit. If you get crit, like, no, you didn't, you know, because that way for sure you're getting some benefit. Unless they roll a crit again, in which case, press F to pay respects. What can I do? Um, the die just didn't like you that day. Okay, another one of the super feats. This one is a super for tanking, basically control. Um, and as I said, it pairs very well with the other two, Great Weapon Master and Polearm Master. What Sentinel does is, when you hit a creature with an opportunity attack, the creature speed becomes 0 for the rest of the turn. So thing can't run away from you potentially. Creatures provoke opportunity attacks from you, even if they take the disengage action. So, rogues, you cannot escape. Anyway, and last, when a creature within 5 feet of you makes an attack on something else, you can smack them. So it increases your damage, it increases your control, and it makes you scary. Like, this can potentially really frustrate your DM, which may be what you want. Because if their big monster that relies on mobility to survive can't move, then it just dies. So there you go. Very, very good talent. Um, Next up, Shadow Touched. So remember Fey Touched earlier? This is the opposite of that. So instead of a Fey creature going boop, a Shadow creature went boop. And now you can learn invisibility and 2 schools from the illusion or necromancy school list. Spell schools. Yeah, it's good. Invisibility is one of the more, like universally useful tools in your spell kit, and having that never hurts. Next one. This is the next to last of the broken or always picked feats. This one is Sharpshooter. It is the ranged counterpart to Great Weapon Master. The passive benefits are really good and would honestly make this a great feat by themselves. When you're attacking long range, you know how most of your weapons have 2 ranges? You can kind of ignore the first one, because attacking long range doesn't impose disadvantage on your range attacks anymore. Just normal roll. Next, you ignore 3/4 cover and half cover too. And last, before you make an attack with a ranged weapon, you can take your -5 and do +10. So yeah, I will also say this combos really well with the crossbow expert from earlier to do a stupid amount of damage. um, and if you are a ranger or a fighter and you have the archery specialization, you automatically have a +2 to hit. So technically, you're taking like a -3 to do +10 to most things. So, yeah. This is the other talent that if you are a ranged character, I will just give you at level 8. So don't take it normally. um, so if you're 2-weapon big guy, I give you Great Weapon Master. If you're ranged, I give you um, Sharpshooter. And if you're a magic person, I will tell you the one in a minute. Um, if you take them earlier, that's fine too. But at level 8, you would get them for free. Um, let's see here. Next feat Shield Master. This is a great feat. Um, Honestly, if you were sword and board style, I might be considered to give you this one in compensation for the other classes get their super broken feats. But not yet. That would be something we would talk about. Anyway, it's a very straightforward tool. It's amazing. It's great. When you attack, you can use a bonus action to shove. And when you shove, you either move something away or you knock them down. That's what you. That's what shove. That's what the shove action does. If you aren't incapacitated, you can add your shield's AC. So typically 2, but they're magical shields, so it can get up to like 5. Um, you can add that to your dexterity saving throws against spells or other harmful effects. And if you succeed on a dexterity saving throw, that the thing is, if you succeed, you take half damage. You take no damage. So basically, you get a special version of evasion in addition to this. So it's a really, really good feat. If you're a shield guy, I would highly recommend you taking this. Um, Maybe that's what I'll do. I'll have like a set of feats that I'm like at level 8. Pick one of these, and you know which ones you'll pick. Sorry, I'm like thinking to myself as I'm doing this. Anyway, next one, skill expert. It's exactly what you think it is. You get ability score increase. You get a skill, and one skill you have becomes expertise. I mean, what's not to love? Um, on the other hand, if you want quantity, not quality, there's skilled, which gives you 3 skill proficiencies. So there you go. You want to be a skill monkey? Be a skill monkey. Uh, Next one is Skulker. Pretty situational. I doubt anybody other than rogues would get this, but it's interesting, and I like it. One of my players took it, and I make note to always I make it useful. I feel as a DM, if you take a feat, it is on me to make you feel good about taking that feat. Um, okay, so how it works. If you're trying to hide, you can do that when you are only lightly obscured. So just like a little mist or you like in the shadows or something, I'll let you hide. Typically you have to be, fully hidden to try and hide. Also, when you're hidden and you miss with a ranged weapon attack, you don't reveal your position. Like you're that good. You're like you got a silencer or something on your crossbow. Anyway, and last, dim light doesn't impose disadvantage on your perception checks relying on sight. That's probably the most universally thing because, like, I know most people forget dark vision does not mean you see perfectly in the dark. You still have disadvantage on your perception checks if you have dark vision in the dark, because you're only seeing in black and white and only so far. So, this gets rid of that. So, my character is a halfling, so she doesn't have dark vision yet. But still, anything that's like dim light, she can see normally. No disadvantage on perception checks. I should remind her of that one more often because I feel like I forget. Um, that's another thing. Know your stuff. If you pick the feat, it is on you to remember the feat's effects, not the DM. Just juggling a lot. All right. Next one, slasher. You get a +1 to your strength or dex. When you hit something with slashing damage, you can reduce their movement by 10 feet until the start of your next turn. And when you store a crit with a slashing weapon, you can grievously wound the target. So until the start of your next turn, the target has disadvantage on all attack rolls. So, pretty good. Pretty good. A little more nuanced than Crusher, but or Piercer. But I like it. Next one is Spell Sniper. Kind of niche. Like, I'm going to describe it, and then if it sounds cool to you, it's probably good. If it doesn't sound good to you, it's useless. So, like, when you cast a spell that you have to make an attack roll, the range is doubled. Now, the first problem here is there aren't a lot of spells in D&D that use attack rolls. There are some, though, and if you use them, advantage to you. Next one, the range spell attacks ignore half and 3/4 cover. So it's kind of got the sharpshooter bit there, that's actually a very good benefit. Again, if you're using those kinds of spells a lot. So maybe this is probably the person who get the most benefit out of this is Warlock using Eldritch Blast all the time. But potentially sorcerers and stuff too. But anyway, you learn one cantrip that requires an attack roll. The cantrip can be from the Bard, Cleric, Druid, Sorcerer, Warlock, so whatever spell list. And that's not important. You pick a spell, it is powered the same way as the class that uses that spell. So if it's Warlock or Bard, or it's Charisma, if it's a Wizard, it's Intelligence, if it's a Druid, it's Wisdom, you get it. But yeah, so the benefits are pretty straightforward to understand. It's very specific. So if you are using that kind of spell, maybe. If not, don't worry about it. I know that a lot of spells, like I said, there aren't very many spells that use attack rolls, and the ones that do typically have a pretty good range. So I'm not sure how often it'd come up, but I personally, as a DM, like big battlefields. So it'll probably come up more than in most campaigns. I like movement and range to be important. Anyway, next feat. I'm starting to lose my voice here. Squat nimbleness. You have to be a dwarf or a small race. Dwarves are actually still medium race. So there. Nah. You get a +1 to your strength or dex. Your walking speed increases by 5. And you gain proficiency with either acrobatics or athletics. And you have advantage on any checks you make to try and escape from being grappled. So athletics or acrobatics, your choice. Very good feat. I like it a lot. This was another one I had on that monk because I wanted it. I think it was because I wanted athletics. I had acrobatics, and I wanted to be proficient in both. And I like having the most movement speed I could. I mean, being a monk kind of, you get some bonus movement speed already, but getting that extra 5 I like to be as much movement as possible. Dwarfs are very dangerous over short distances. That kind of thing. Oh Lord, the hard to pronounce one. It's a gnome only feat called Zirfnifblin magic. Um, you learn non-detection, blindness, blur, and disguise self. Um, those are all good spells. If you're a gnome, if you're a deep gnome specifically, hard to go wrong with that, man. Um, uh, okay, we're almost done. We got like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 left, and the next one's pretty fun. I like it. It's I'm gonna be honest, the mechanical benefit isn't that great, but it's got so much style. So much style. All right, first off, it's a half feat. You get either strength or con on top of the benefits. Here's the fun one. You're proficient in improvised weapons. So anything you grab is a weapon for you. Also, your unarmed strikes can deal a d4 damage instead of just 1. Which just feels psychologically good. If you are a fisticuffs person and you're not a monk, this is a great way to do it. Before they added the fighting style, this was the main way to get damage on your punches. I personally think the fighting style for the fighters is too good. It seems to take away from this feat and monk for doing unarmed stuff, but that's neither here nor there. Let's see here. When you hit a creature with an unarmed strike or an improvised weapon on your turn, you can use a bonus action to attempt to grapple the target. So remember way back when we talked about Grappler, this is why I was saying it combined with Tavern Brawler are kind of good. Because if you can hit and grab, and then the next turn have advantage on the hits, that's good. That's good. So, there you go. It's a fun talent. I'm always encouraged this one. All right, next one is pretty new. It's from Tasha's, called Telekinetic. You gain a +1 to your intelligence, wisdom, or charisma, and you learn Mage Hand. You can cast it without any verbal, somatic hoodoo. You just bop. And it's also invisible. Normally, they can see the hand. If you already knew the spell, you increase its range. So, just flat on top. It gets all those benefits. Then additionally, as a bonus action, you can use it to you can not. I'm sorry, I started to misspoke. This isn't tied to Mage Hand. This is a separate benefit. As a bonus action, you can shove one creature telekinetically that you can see within 30 feet of you, and when for 5 feet, so you can from 30 feet away Sparta kick somebody with your mind. It's good. It's good. Uh, let's see here. Next one is also from Tasha's. It's telepathic. So you get a +1 to your intelligence, wisdom, or charisma. You can speak telepathically to any creature you can see within 60 feet. As long as the creature understands a language. Let me double check. Oh wait, no, it doesn't. It doesn't translate. Your telepathic utterances are in a language you know, and the creature understands you only if it knows that language. And it can't respond telepathically. But you can project your thoughts into a person's head. You can make somebody think they're going nuts if you want. You know, but I'm sure there's a lot of applications for this. I mean, 60 feet range isn't the longest, but still, I imagine you could have some fun with this. It does also have the detect thoughts spell attached as well. So you can cast detect thoughts with no spell or components. You can only do it once per long rest, though. And detect thoughts is exactly what you think it is. You read somebody's mind. And if you don't have the spell and you're a spellcaster, you can use your own spell slots to cast this normally. So, worst case scenario, you get detect thoughts as a spellcaster, But even if you're not a spellcaster, you can get the spell and you can get the mental projection thing. So it's nice. Now for arguably the simplest yet most effective feat in the game for what it does, tough. You get more hit points. That's what it does. You get an extra 2 HP per level. It's that simple. If you don't know what you want, take tough. It just makes you not die as quickly. Um, it's you don't get much simpler than that, and it keeps going. Like every time you level, 2 more hit points. So that's like a lot if you're a wizard, and if you're not a wizard, every little bit helps, right? One of my players took that and has enjoyed it. Um, all right, the last of the broken. This one isn't broken. I actually like this feat a lot. Its benefits are simple and not super impactful, but I consider it broken simply because if you're a caster, you take this feat. It's just that simple. I don't know of any caster who has the choice to take this feat and doesn't eventually take this feat if you're a full caster. It's called Warcaster. And it gives you advantage on your saving throws to maintain concentration spells. You can do like somatic components even if you have your hands full with like a shield and sword. And the last one is really, really good. A lot of casters, opportunity attacks are completely worthless to you, right? Because, I mean, what are you going to do? You're going to bop them with your stick for like 4 damage? Um, this lets you cast a spell instead. There are some caveats. It has to be a spell targeting one creature. Let me double check. I'm going to make sure, because the specifics are kind of important on this one. You can use your reaction to cast a spell at the creature rather than making an opportunity attack. The spell must have a casting time of 1 action and must target only that creature. So no fireballs. Sorry. But you can do a lot of spells. You can cast a firebolt if you just want to do a cantrip, or you can do an inflict wounds if you're a cleric, man. Just rip something soul out of their body. It's horrifying. Um, so yeah, that's another one. That's the one. If you're a caster, I'll just give it to you at level 8. Um, let's see here. Last two are pretty bland. Weapon Master, you get a +1 to strength or dex, and you gain a proficiency in 4 weapons of your choice. If you really want to use a weapon and you do not have proficiency in that weapon and you don't want to multi-class into something, this will give you proficiency in that weapon. This is like purely for aesthetics, I think. Most classes that use melee weapons, you get proficiency in all the weapons you need to use. Like, maybe a strength ranger or something? I don't know. But yeah, it's a weird feat. I don't know. I wouldn't recommend this one. But if you really want to be the wizard using the great sword, go for it. Um, uh, Even then, I know of a better way to do that, but that's beside the point. um, all right, last one. Finally, thank the Lord. Wood elf magic. You have to be a wood elf, which means a normal wood elf, a Valinor wood elf, or an Erini wood elf. So basically, so if you're Legolas, you learn a couple of things. You learn a druid cantrip of your choice, long strider, and pass without a trace. Each of it, obviously the druid cantrip you can do whenever because it's a cantrip. And long strider and pass trace you can cast once without expending a spell slot each. And you regain both of those every long rest, like normal. So, situationally, like, Pass Without Trace is a really, really good stealth spell. It gives you +10 to your stealth checks for you and everybody near you. and long strider just makes you run faster. I mean, what's wrong with that? I think it gives you like an extra 10 feet of movement. Yeah. So, okay. It took an hour and a half. That's why I don't want to have this conversation every time somebody's like, well, I don't know what feats to pick. So, this is the conversation. Enjoy. I'm putting it on YouTube. I know it's a bad video. I hope you enjoy it anyway. God bless.